Company of Habitants. The Company of Habitants FR. Compagnie des Habitants, or the Communauté des Habitants, was a fur trading company chartered in 1645 in the French colony of Canada to succeed the Company of 100 Associates. History. The colony of New France was officially settled during the reign of Henry Roman IV in 1608, when Samuel de Champlain founded Quebec, and in the following years it came under the control of several fur trading companies, eventually consolidating control under the newly founded Company of 100 Associates in 1627, which was made up of investors back in France, who would be charged with supplying ships and provisions to transport a certain number of colonists to settle in the territory every year. For a number of different reasons, the quota of new settlers coming from France was continually not being met, and the population of New France fell far behind that of the rival English colonies in North America, as well as the early Dutch colony of New Netherland. The small group of businessmen and nobles in the young colony led by Pierre Legardeur and Jean-Paul Godefroy came up with the idea to take over the mandate of overseeing the settlement of Canada from the Company of 100 Associates, whose investors were far removed across the ocean back in France, and in return profit on the monopoly of the fur trade themselves in the colony. They managed to convince the Crown of their plan and were granted a charter to that effect in 1645. Initially, the company was overseen and owned by a small number of notable merchants, businessmen, and nobles in the colony, who would cover the costs of shipping 20 colonists to Canada a year, as well as all administrative expenses of the colony, and an additional 1,000 livres worth of beaver pelts in rent on top of all expenses. Not long after this, following the protests of several rival and disgruntled Canadian lords and businessmen back in France, the royal authorities in Paris became weary of such large revenues from the North American fur trade being managed and profited on in a faraway, sparsely settled territory by such a small group of individuals, and citing extravagances by the 12 original owners and directors, took back control of the company just 2 years later in 1647. Matters worsened when the fur trade and subsequently the company went into sharp decline following the French allied Hurons being pushed further west in a war with their Iroquois enemies in 1652. Consumed by debt, the company's shares were consolidated and slowly but steadily sold off in the following years to the Company of Rouen in France, with the control of the fur trade and responsibility of colonization shifting back to the Company of 100 Associates, and both companies would finally be dissolved in 1663 by King Louis Roman XIV, who then transferred the rights of investment in the fur trade to the French West India Company, and took the colony under direct control of the Crown and made it a province of France. Personnel. The company was founded and initially managed and virtually entirely owned by a board of 12 directors that included Jean Burden, Royal Surveyor and Engineer; François de Chavigny, Seigneur and Lieutenant to Governor de Montmagny; Guillaume Couillat, Seigneur and businessman; Mathurin Gagnon, merchant and store owner; Robert Gifford, Seigneur and master surgeon; Jean-Paul Godefroy, Native American interpreter and businessman; Jean Godefroy de Lintot, Seigneur and fur merchant; Jean Guyon, Seigneur and master mason; Noel Juchereau des Chastellets, businessman and legal counselor; Pierre Legardeur de Repentigny, noble, Seigneur and admiral of shipping for New France; Jacques Leneuf de la Poterie, noble, Seigneur, businessman and governor of Trois-Rivières; Mitchell Leneuf du Harrison, noble, Seigneur, businessman, and later lieutenant general of Trois-Rivières. 2 years after its formation, a regulatory council replaced the owners and directors, which was composed of the governor of New France, the governor of Montreal, the superior of the Jesuits in Canada, and they were assisted by the syndics, or locally elected legal representatives, of the three major towns of Quebec, Trois-Rivières, and Montreal.